So the Rebbe explained the idea of Tzivos Hashem and Tzivokos by itself, and now the Rebbe is going to connect the name that the Yidden are called Tzivokos to the idea of the Eberster's name. The Eberster is also called, Yidden are called Tzivos and Hashem is called Tzivokos. And the Rebbe explains what is the idea of Tzivokos and how come that the name Tzivokos was only called by the Navi and not in the Torah, and how this is to bring down how godliness comes down into Biyah, and the Moshe Rabbeinu is in the level of Atzilus, as we'll see the explanation in the following in the Mamer. Dalet. And behold, it is known the Masha Yisrael Nikroyim Odom. Why is the Yidden referred to as Odom? Atem Kruyim Odom. Why are we Odom? Al Shem Adam Al Elyon. Because we are similar to the Supreme. And Memele, when we say Tzivos, that we're Tzivos, and we're going to connect it to Tzivokos, you're going to say, how could you say Tzivos is people? This is Hashem. No, Adame Le'elyon. Why is it called Odom? Because of our comparison Le'elyon. Shemezem, move on. So from this we understand the Masha Yisrael Nikroim Gamkein B'Shem Tzivos, the fact that the Yidden are also called Tzivos, Shayich Zel LaHashem Tzivokos, that has a connection to the name of Tzivokos. Shehu Mezayin Hashemis She'enam Nimchokim. The name Tzivokos is one of the 7 names that are not allowed to be erased. So what is the connection of the Yidden being called Tzivokos to the name Tzivokos? And first we'll understand what this name of Tzivokos comes from. We'll understand this based on what the Alter Rebbe writes. Sheshem Tzivokos Nizgala Alidei Haneviv. The name of Hashem, Tzivokos, doesn't appear in the Torah. That is revealed through the prophets. And we find this in the Gemara. The Gemara says in Brachas Lamed Aleph Amid Beis that Miyoim Shabora HaKadosh Baruch Hu Esei Lomai Lo Yehoya Odom Shekaroi LaKadosh Baruch Hu Tzivokos. That from the day of creation of the world, nobody referred to Hashem as Tzivokos, the God of hosts, Tzivokos. Ad Shabbos Chano, till Chano came in a prayer when she was davening for her son by Eli over there for Shmuel, the Karosei Tzivokos, and she referred to Hashem as Tzivokos. So Mamer HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so Hashem said, Osid ben Shalcho Livtoyach Benevuah B'Shem Zeh. In the future, your son will open up his prophecy by saying Koi Omar Hashem Tzivokos B'Shem Zeh. So already we see that in the Torah and throughout Tilchana it wasn't there. But the Iker HaNevuah B'Shem Zeh, this was somewhat even in the times of Shmuel. But the main nevuah to use the name of Tzivokos, that was during the later prophets, that were at the end of the first Beis Hamikdash and the beginning of Golus. So you see that Tzivokos was not used at all in the Torah. It was just used a little bit by Shmuel, but really used was later on in the Beis Hamikdash. Majority of their prophecy, they used the name of Tzivokos. So now it almost seems that that means that the name Tzivokos is of lesser importance, lesser significance than the name, other names of Hashem, because this name is mentioned in the Torah. It's only used by the prophets. But the truth of the matter is that there is a seriousness, like we find one who violates words of a prophet is more severely punished than violating many laws of the Torah. So it is not so simple that this is less. It's not really less. So that's what Rebbe brings up. Hine hagam shedivrei hanevim, divrei kabbalah, hem lamata b'madrega, medivrei Torah. Even though the words of the prophets, which is called the words of Kabbalah, are less on a lower level from the words of the Torah. So this is words of the Torah do not match up as much higher words of the Torah than the prophecy of the prophets. Even with regards to Moshe's prophecy, nobody was like Moshe. Moshe gave us the Torah. Moshe's prophecy and Moshe's teaching is in a higher level than all Nevi'im. So the Nevi'im's prophecy is lower than Moshe Rabbeinu's prophet, Moshe Rabbeinu's Torah. That's even Moshe's prophecy, but Torah itself, the prophecy is lower. So it turns out that it seems like it went down. The name Tzvokis is a lower level. Afal Pikein, yeah, Shem Tzvokis, Lenisker, B'Torah Ki Menevim Davke, this name of Tzvokis. Only in the Nevi'im, V'yesh Maila B'divrei Novi al Divrei Torah. And there is a Maila, so Torah is higher, but Torah doesn't mention it. But it's not mentioned, only Nevi'im. So there is a Maila, an advantage, B'divrei Novi al Divrei Torah, in the words of the prophets over the words of Torah. Commercial Matzina, we talk and find so. One who should violate the words of a prophet is more severely punished than one who violates words of Torah. So since the punishment is greater, that means that the blemish is greater. Move on. That it is also the blemish. So the blemish that you create when you violate the words of a Navi, in some cases, is more severe than violating the words of the Torah. So, but yet, we see that Tzvakas is only by the Navi, in the Nevi'ah. So based on this, the Mittler Rebbe explains Baruch at lens, so what's the reason, Taka, that the punishment and the blemish of one who violates the words of the prophet, why is it more difficult than one who would violate many different Torah? It's not as severe. How could it be that the words of the Navi are more important than the words of the Torah? It's not the same level, it's a lower level. So he says, that's connected to the fact that the name Tzvokis came down through the Nevi'im. So basically, these two ideas, that Tzvokis is only in the Nevi'im, and we find that the Nevi'im's violation of Nevi'im creates a greater punishment and a greater blemish. That tells us that connection, that there is something about the words of the Nevi'im, which is associated with the name Tzvokos, which therefore causes a greater impact and a greater punishment, even more than the words of Torah. And it's all associated to understand the name of Tzvokos, so we'll know the Yidden why they're called Tzivos. The Rebbe explains now, and I say, the idea is in a pirush shem tzvokos. What is the Gemara explains? The word tzvokos is ois. Ois means a letter. Tzva is the army, all the creations. So we say that tzvokos is who ois, tzvok is who ois, who b'tzava shaloi. That the Eibishter is a sign in his army. The Eibishter creates an army, the whole world. But the Eibishter is a sign, the godliness in within the army. That is tzva kois. So the ois in the tzava, that the Eibishter finds himself within all of creation. Hainu, that is, the tzava uribu nivroim. Tzava is the multiple nivroim. Vashem tzvaka is, the name tzvaka is oisu b'tzava shaloi, that he is that letter, that sign in the tzava shaloi, u'b'chinas halikus k'moshe nimshach b'nivroim. That is the level of godliness that extends into the created being. As explained in the Torah, with regard to the name Tzvokis, Tzvokis comes from the language armies. And what are these armies that we're saying? These Shem's armies. These are the battalions of the souls and angels of the world of Bria. From themselves, they are not godly. The oisu betzvokos, we give into the tzvokos the ois, that godliness. This is the difference between the name tzvokos to the other names that are not erased, even though they're all part of the seven that are not erased. The chol hashemes moidim aloyrin sof k'moshu batzilus. All of the names of Hashem, the other six names, they point to the Ein Sof, the infinite, as he is in Atzilus. Shehu Olam Ha'achdus. That's the world of unity. Over there we say Ihu v'Chayoyi, Hashem and his life force. Ischad is one. And then we say Ihu v'Garmoyi, Hashem and the garments are Chad, are one. There is unity, there is godliness over there. The world of Atzilus is godliness. Mashen ken shem tzvokes as opposed to them tzvokes. Moir aloid in sof moshenim shachom islavish b'biam. That points to the sof as it extends and dresses up in biyah. Shehem almo di pruda. These are worlds of separation. Nivroim nifrodim. The create and the nivroim that are separated. K'mesha kosuv u'misham yiparet. As the pasuk says that they separate misham yiparet l'arba roshim, and this is the alma de pruda is biyah. Shalachein yesh mandam b'gemara, because this is such a low level. The name tzvokis is different. There is a manda omar in the Gemara, and v'loy rak kosal kodaitoch. That's not just a thought, but it's actually a manda. Shetzvokis einoi shem kodesh. That tzvokis is b'chlal not a holy name. Shaloi nikra tzvokis elo al shem Yisrael. Tzvokis is called because of the Yidden. The Yidden are the Eibishter's army, the tzvokis, but Hashem himself not. And also v'gam lifi mashe dekai malon the tzvokis u'mashem eshenem nimchokim. It's all because it's in biyah, but also according to what the halacha is, that tzvokis is from the names that cannot be erased. Hine shem zeh koi aloid in sof k'moshe nimshach u'mislabish b'nivroim. So it's talking about the Ein Sof. It's a shame, but it's the Ein Sof as he extends and dresses up in creation. That's the name Tzvokis. Yeshloimar habiyur al pimadiis u'bezoyar u'betikun zoyar u'bekisve harizal. Explaining this according to what it says in the Zohar, Tikun Kisve harizal. Shashem Tzvokis u'benetzach v'hoid. That the name of Tzvokis is Netzach v'hoid, because ki Netzach v'hoid hem lebar megufa. That's outside of the body. The body itself, Chesed, Drei Yimona, Gvura, Drei Smola, the body Yisoid, Netzach and Hoid, and certainly not talking about Yisoid, are Labarim Gufa. They're already outside of the body. Hainu Shinyonam Hu Loi Bishvil Ha'atzilus Gufa. So even that's the way they're not Atzilus, they're not for Atzilus itself. But rather in order to bring down into the worlds of Yah, which is lower than Atzilus. Similar to what we know, Netzach v'hoiz hein kloyes yotzes. Netzach v'hoiz are called the kidneys that advise, and the kidneys that advise are there in order to give the flow to the son and the student. So it has to go through Netzach v'hoid, and that's the level of lebar megufa, because that's what godliness, the way godliness is in biyah. Ein sof inside the ois bitzvokas. Both. This is the reason why the name tzvokas is not mentioned in the Torah, only in the Nevi'im. The Torah was the level of biyah, of atzilus. Ki Moshe Rabbeinu neshama v'anhagad atzilus. He was a soul, and his conduct was Vatzilus. Shaloch ein nikra Moshe. That's why he is called Moshe al Shem. So she called him Moshe because minamayim mishisiu, because she drew him out of the water. That's Moshe. So drawing him out of the water means mayim chochma b'chinas atzilus. The level of chochma, the general is chochma. And she took him out from the Mayi, meaning she took him from Atzilus because his neshama is from Atzilus. That's where he comes from. She brought him into life because she saved him, take him out of the water. Same thing is the Torah which was given through Moshe. It's also called in the name of Moshe, Moshe Kosov Zichru, Torahs, Moshe Avdi. Remember the Torah, Moshe, my servant. He becomes Atzilus. That's level Atzilus. That's why the Torah we don't have the name Tzvokas. Kishem Tzvokas Moira Kinal Al Oirin Sof K'moy Shenim Shach B'Nivroim. Because Tzvokas would mean the Ein Sof as Nivroim, and that Shalamatam Atzilus, which is below Atzilus. But Moshe Rabbeinu and the Torah that Moshe Rabbeinu gave us is in Atzilus. So there's no tzvakas there because tzvakas is already in biyah. So similar to what is written in Yeshua, Vayomer loy ki ani sar tzvor Hashem ato Basi. Yeshua saw this person approaching, and he said to him who he is, who does he belong to? He says to him, to which side is he on? He says, no. I am a Sar Tzvo Hashem. He uses the language and officers of the Tzvo Hashem. Atobos. Razal. And our sages tell us, why does it say Atobosi? He says, now I come, which means Yehoshua is able to take Tzvo Hashem. Moshe Rabbeinu would not. Now I came. Moshe Rabbeinu did not accept him. The Bimei Moshe in the times of Moshe, which was Pnei Moshe Kipnei Chamo. Moshe's face was like the face of the sun versus Yeshua, which was like the moon, on a much higher level. So Moshe Rabbeinu Hoyam Shochas Bechinas Atzilus. It was bringing down the world of Atzilus. V'gam hanogas hamilchama is also the waging, the conduct of the wars were not done through an angel. It was not done through tzvakas. Lo'isar de sar tzva Hashem. Wasn't done by a sar tzva Hashem, and that's why atabasi, not by Moshe. Kim k'mesha kosu over the posuk Havayi lochem lochem. The Eibster wages for it didn't come through any angels. It came directly. Hashem yilochem lochem. Because Moshe Rabbeinu's level and Moshe Rabbeinu's Amshocha was from Atzilus, not the level of Tzvokis, which was through an angel. Zehu Mashi Yitzias Mitzrayim Ukriyas Yamsuf. Hayunisim Geluyim. This is why what we find that in the exodus of Egypt and the splitting of the sea, there were open miracles. They were totally outside of the ways of nature. There was no garment of nature at all. The way the war was waged through the Shem Havai with level of Atzilus. After the passing of Pnei Moshe, which was like the Pnei of the Chama, the sun. So Moshe Rabbeinu no longer was Atzilus here after he passed. And then the leadership went over to Yeshua, which was Kipnei Levana, the side, like the face of the moon, much less. That's when it comes to Tzvar Hashem, comes the lower level. That was only by Yeshua. Ato Dafke Basi. Now, by Yeshua, that's when it comes. So that doesn't mean that there wasn't miracles, outstanding miracles, but they weren't as fascinating as the time of Kriyas Yamsuf. Shegam Oz Al Yidei Shanhogas HaMilchama Hoysa Desar Tzvar Havayim. Even then, by the time of Yeshua, since the war was taking place through a Sar of the army of Hashem, through this angel, there was Hoyukama Nisim Shalamayim Hateva. There were many miracles which were beyond nature. Nevertheless, part of the war was dressed up in garments of nature. But not the war like in the days of Moshe. That was totally beyond the garments of nature. Hashem waged war for you. So there is a chilik in the extent. By Moshe, it was totally not with the Sar Tzva Hashem, not Tzvokos. By here, it was already Tzvokos. It was the way the Eibishter dresses up in the level of Biyah. And this is the name Tzvokos that comes through the Nevi'im. Oisu b'tzova shaloi. The Ois, Hashem's energy, Hashem's present within the Tzova shaloi. Shagam b'biyah yiyah, that also in Bri Yitziras here there should be to turn it in that here too Hashem and His garment should be worn just like it's in Atzilus. Be'inyan ze lehu l'maylo mibchinas sar tzva havayah. That idea of tzvokis is higher than the level of tzva havayah in Yeshua. Here we're talking the name of Hashem, Tzvokos, Oisu B'Shloi. Over there we're talking about an angel. Shoi B'Shloi Kisar Tzvaravayu Malach. That's an angel. Mashenkin Shem Tzvokos Hu Mezayin Shem L'Shem Nechokim. This is of the 7 names that are not erased, so it's a much higher level. Kigam B'Biyah, because this, what is accomplished to Tzvokos, also beyond Nasi Garmoyichad, Hashem and His Kelim is one, and they'll therefore this become Hashem. Hashem is actually there, Ois, who b'tzvokis. And this is the idea that the name Tzvokis was established, was founded through the Nevi'im, because the Nevi'im, they draw down, Shagam b'kelim dibiyah, that also the vessel of Yah, that this should be able to dress up the infinite blessed Behi in total unity. So this becomes godly, becomes focus. Just in the Kematzilus. Through this union, creating that Garmoyichad, the Eibush is called Tzvokis. Just as it's called Keil Elikim V'chulu, which are Shemoidim ala Kelim, the Atzilus, which go on the Kelim Atzilus Fishiv Garmoyichad, because he and his Kelim are one. So when the Elikim Keil dress up in the Kelim, they're Keil and Elikim, Iyu Garmoyichad, Kegam Hatzvokos, Loshon Chayolos, Kedud and Neshamas Malachot Ebriyos, because also the Tzvokos, Nasu chad ima yizbarach. They become one with Hashem. I explained at length in Torah. This is the idea of the name Tzvokis. The Rebbe will continue to explain further in the Mamer.